everyone, thank you for joining us today. My name is Purva Vijayvargiya and I am presenting today alongside my co author Abhishek Vishwakarma. This work was done as part of our research at Cal Poly Pomona, and the paper also includes contributions from Nathan Lee and our advisor Dr. Mohammad Husain. Today, we'll be walking you through our research titled Experimental Evaluation of Security Attacks on Self Driving Car Platforms, which lies at the intersection of AI, cybersecurity, and robotics. So, here's a quick overview of what we'll cover. We'll begin with the motivation and the introduction behind the work and what problems we are trying to solve. Then we'll talk about two categories of attacks: perception based attacks using image perturbations, and network based attacks on AV communication systems. For each, we'll walk through experimental setup, results, and finally, we'll present the countermeasures and conclusions. So, moving forward, the introduction. Autonomous vehicles, or AVs, rely heavily on two things: deep learning for perception and networked communication for control and coordination. While these systems enable AVs to make complex decisions in real time, they also introduce new attack surfaces. On the ML side, models are susceptible to adversarial inputs, images that look normal to humans but could confuse neural networks. On the network side, AVs often rely on Wi Fi or radio for telemetry and control, which can be intercepted or manipulated. So, our research focuses on testing how vulnerable these systems are in practice, not just in theory, and what can be done to defend them. So, moving with the two main problems we will focus on are: first, the perception system, specifically conv- convolutional neural networks, which can be misled by adversarial images. Second, many AVs use unencrypted or weakly secured network channels. These can be exploited through attacks like packet flooding or interception. Our objectives were threefold: evaluate the effectiveness of both image based and network based attacks, then compare how two real world problems, JetRacer and Yaboom, respond to these attacks, and then finally propose mitigation techniques that are practical and affordable to implement in real world scenario. So, we begin with perception attacks, specifically image scaling attacks. These are subtle perturbations added to high resolution image that persist even after resizing. The idea is that while humans won't notice anything unusual, the CNN will get confused. We use two popular adversarial methods: FGSM, or fast gradient sign method. This is a single step attack that's quick to compute. PGD, or projected gradient descent, a stronger iterative method that fine tunes the perturbations over multiple steps. We tested these on both controlled and realistic datasets: CIFAR-10 for baseline accuracy and KITTI for real world driving scenarios. So, moving to next, image scaling attacks in detail. So, here's how image scaling attacks work. When a high resolution image is resized, for example, before it's passed into a CNN for classification, the embedded noise remains. So the CNN still sees the adversarial pattern, and makes an incorrect prediction. So FGSM modifies the image using the gradient of the loss function in a single step. It's quick but relatively shallow. PGD, on the other hand, performs multiple iterations of small perturbations, making it much more effective at breaking the model. These techniques were originally tested on classification problems, but we extended them to test their effect on AV perception and lane following. So moving to next, the CNN model architecture. For our experiments, we built a lightweight CNN model tailored for embedded deployment like in JetRacer. The architecture is fairly standard, convolutional layers with ReLU activations followed by max pooling and fully connected layers. We first trained this model on CIFAR-10, a standard image classification dataset, to get a baseline performance. Then we evaluated the model using the KITTI dataset, which includes real world street level driving images. The goal was to measure how resilient or fragile the model is under adversarial conditions. So, on the CIFAR-10 dataset, we first tested the model without any attacks. Accuracy was around 70%. When we applied FGSM attacks, accuracy dropped sharply to around 50%. While that might not seem catastrophic, it shows that even simple attacks reduce reliability. With PGD attacks, the results were much worse. Accuracy dropped to as low as 9 to 13%. Remember, CIFAR-10 is a relatively simple dataset, so these numbers are alarming. The takeaway here is even with basic images and small perturbations, CNNs can be easily fooled, especially without adversarial training or pre-processing defense. So moving to the next slide, the KITTI driving scenario results. Now let's look at the real world implications. We applied PGD attacks on the KITTI dataset. This uh, this better simulates the kind of input an actual AV camera would process. With targeted PGD attacks, we were able to force specific misclassifications. For example, making the vehicle think it's in a left turn lane when it's not, with a 47% success rate. Untargeted attacks were even more disruptive. They dropped the model's accuracy to 13.59% and caused frequent lane following failures in simulation. You can imagine the real world danger here. If the vehicle suddenly misjudges its lane, it could swerve into another car or off the road. These results shows that perception attacks are not just theoretical. They can have real physical consequences when delayed in a vehicle.
Taking over what Purva said, I'll be covering the network attacks part of our research. Talking about the motivation behind this, so basically you need uh, to explore like how you can perform these perception attacks in the first place, and that is only via the network. So autonomous vehicles rely heavily on wireless communication, either via radio, Wi-Fi or Bluetooth for control and sensor data exchange. These channels can introduce critical cybersecurity vulnerabilities that can be exploited by network-based attacks. Digital compromise directly translates to physical hazard, meaning like there can be malicious manipulations or data interruptions that can lead to unintended late deviations, loss of control or collisions while vehicles are attacked while they are in operation. So I'll talk about the gaps. So while theoretical threats are identified, empirical studies are in the real world impacts are there, and there are mitigation techniques, but which are limited. Our research addresses this gap by experimentally validating two types of attacks. First is the man in the middle attack with package injection, and the denial of service attacks on JetRacer and Yaboom platforms. Network attack types and rationale that I'll be covering today. So first is the denial of service attack, which was done by UDP flooding on HTTP port 8080 to disrupt the telemetry that was going across. And this, what this causes, it causes packet drops, delays, and the system gets hanged. The next attack which I will be covering will be the man in the middle attack, which was performed using ARP spoofing to intercept and modify the telemetry data, for example, speed and steering. And the tools that were used for this attack were Betacap with a custom JavaScript payload for data manipulation. So the rationale behind these are experiments as POCs were simple, like simplicity, a real world applicability, measurable effects on system performance, that can be like depending on the attack type, and use of common ports like 8080 and unencrypted protocols like HTTP, which they're exchanging data over, and with systems that have minimal authentication, and such kind of systems are like the ideal target for such kind of attacks. Let's start with the experimental setup. There was a control track environment with vehicles connected via Wi-Fi to a local network with a control laptop, MacBook Air. The tools which were used in this setup were nping, Betacap for MITM, with HTTP proxy with modify packets .js, which is our payload, and Wireshark for monitoring in between traffic during the DNS attack, and TCP dump for monitoring our TCP packets. The evaluation metrics were vehicle stability, control accuracy, lane deviations or collisions, network latencies, which were like assumed as part of the experimental telemetry data loss, and the effects of the experiments, which can be counted as part of assumptions, but it will definitely lead to these physical hazards if real vehicles get compromised. Over to the next slide. Let's talk about the experimental results of the denial of service attack. So this is the normal operation, as you can see in the frame. This is over the port HTTP over which the Jupyter notebook is running over, and you can see the frame number is 209, and with the timing 23, 30, 37 with 20 to 30 FPS. And let's go after the attack. Next slide. So the impact of DOS attack, you can see we have directly jumped to frame 491. Meanwhile, the system got hung. No new frames were delivered while the attack was getting placed, and we have jumped to frame 491, and the timing is 30:54, which we have like passed around 25-30 seconds. Let's go to the next one. So by this graph, you can see like during that time frame, the amount of packets coming to the system. This is done via Wireshark packet capture, were a lot on that particular 8080 port. This was because of the UDP flooding that we did as part of our DOS attack. So that confirms that the system hangs, and like since because of this packet attack, the Jupyter notebook packets were not delivered as form of frame rendering onto the MacBook Air. Now moving on, I'll talk about the man in the middle attack and what we did. So this, as you can see, this is the Betacap console where we have done ARP spoofing on in between the targets. So there were three PCs. One was the vehicle, one was the control laptop, which is the MacBook Air, and the other was the edge device, which was another vehicle. So it was another PC, which is the server. So a custom JavaScript. So the server was passing this telemetry data to the vehicle, and then and vice versa. So the vehicle was passing this telemetry data over to the server, and we intercepted these attacks because they were on HTTP. So we could intercept that with ARP spoofing and modify using the modify JS payload as part of our ARP spoofing attack. Going next. As we can see here, with help, we can see like in the ARP table spoofing, we can actually correspond the MAC addresses against the IP addresses of the different vehicles. So 180, 218 and 224 were different the IP addresses of each devices. So the conclusion we can say is this validated the feasibility of the real-time telemetry manipulation, leading to erroneous control behavior without immediate signs of compromise. Next, so what kind of countermeasures can we take? So for ML attacks, adversarial training with FGSM and PGD, and a robust image pre-processing filters. Basically, train your model with adverse without like ineffective adversarial FGSM attacks, and your model should be ineffective of these attacks regardless, with robust pre-processing filters. So before like any before your picture goes into the model, you can like pre-process these images going into your model, and you can catch those attacks, or at least countermeasure, have some countermeasures before that incoming image is fed into the model. So for network attacks, we can have basic TLS or SSL encryption over Wi-Fi, and for Bluetooth, we can have secure Bluetooth pairing with LE secure connections, and a real-time anomaly detection on telemetry data. So if the data is changed, and if there's like anomaly or like some garbage data coming in over the network, we can have alerting systems which can tell about those things. Moving on. So I would like to conclude that AVs are obviously exposed to critical threats in both perception and communication, as we saw, and image scaling attacks severely reduce the ML accuracy. Network attacks like DOS and MITM compromise the vehicle control, and securing both layers is essential for safe deployment. So, a network and perception both needs to be secure. So, the future work can be for this research can be considered for physical testing and secure telemetry and cross-platform defenses. And I would like to thank you guys for carefully listening to us, and you can post our questions in the comments and let us know. Thank you.